Hey, it's Mrs. Meckins. In the last couple lessons, we've been working hard on really getting our arms around what is an inference. And taking our eyes over to our anchor chart, we've been collecting details using our reading voice that we then combine, put together based on patterns, memories, relationships. We're just kind of grouping them. These go together because, and we're really thinking about it in order to come up with an inference, an idea that the author never said in the text, but he implied in the text. Well, I want to take you to the next step, but my chart paper's full. And so I'm going to take this same information and I'm going to just show it to you on this next chart paper, okay? Because it says basically the same thing, okay? Just much shorter now that you know what you know. Readers make inferences. So we know readers make inferences. We know they use both voices. We know that they rely on the text details, green, outside the head. They combine them, they group them based on patterns, memories, relationships in order to come up with an inference. Okay, so we agree, right? This is the same information, just a little more concise. Okay, because in this lesson, I want to remind you that readers don't just read, think, and share their thinking orally. They also can explain their thinking in writing. So we've been working on what is an inference, and we've been working on it as a reader and just being able to come up with the answer. But part of what we have to be able to do is explain our thinking in writing. Do you see how it says readers make inferences and? That's this lesson. The and. They can explain those inferences in writing. I want to show you how to do that. Now, don't freak out, you guys. Now, listen. We don't all like to write. Doesn't matter. Here's my thing. You have already done the hard part. If you have already figured out the answer, that was the hard part. Writing the response, cake. I know you may not believe me. I'm going to show you. That's what this lesson is. I'm going to show you how easy it is to explain your thinking when you actually tracked your thinking, recorded your thinking, how easy it is. It's very easy. Okay, so now the first thing I want to do is just teach you in general kind of the order of your written response. Like, okay, so what should your first sentence be? What should your second sentence be? What should your third sentence be? And you might know race or ACE or RAP or CER, claim, evidence, reasoning, or yes, ma'am, or some other acronym. Okay, they all say the same thing. They really do. And here's what you have to understand, and I'm not even going to reference an acronym right now, is that you do see that the inference was the last thing we figured out as a reader, right? Whether you did it in 0.7 seconds or it took you 7 minutes, you collected details that helped, grouped them, figured out why they went together, what they have in common to get the answer. So outside, inside, neck. Step 1, reading voice. Step 2, thinking voice. Step 3, get the answer. You understand as a reader, that's how we did it. Okay, now, as a writer, the last thought you had will be the first sentence you write. When you write a response, your first sentence is to reveal the answer. You want to that'll be your topic sentence. You want to lead with the inference. Okay? So the last thing you think about is the first thing you write. So this will be your first sentence. Okay? You'll use some of the words from the question, but in general, you'll then just, boom, put it out there. What's the answer? Boom. And it's a sentence, so I'm putting a period there. All right? That's your first sentence of your response. Now, you and I know that you can't just say something, claim something, infer something without evidence. So now you follow it with the evidence. Well, now everybody throws around this word evidence. Let's make sure we know what we mean by evidence. Okay? Everybody says, then have evidence, or if you're doing race, cite your evidence, or if it's ma'am, what are your author details? Okay, that's what we're getting at. The next sentence is going to be evidence from the text. You know what those are? They're the green details. But it's not all of the green details. It's not any green detail that you want. It's the ones that were most helpful. Let me just remind you. Remember on the previous lesson, we figured out, I inferred that, here, I'll put it back here. I inferred that the people were in the underground subway or train or something. That was the answer. Remember that? Okay, so all the outside, that was reading voice, right? Details that helped. Okay, so now what we need to do is in our first sentence of our writing, of our written response, our first sentence has to be the answer. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this pink sticky note off, and I'm going to put it on top of my chart paper because it's got to be my first sentence. Okay, but my second sentence needs to be evidence, which is a fancy word for which details were most helpful. You don't have to mention every detail. All the details aren't equal. Some are more important than others. When I look back, remember this is the subway train one. That's the one that I showed you how to do in the previous lesson. So when I think back to what details help me figure it out, now you might not agree, but this is my inference. And so I'm going to tell you which details help me understand, figure out, infer. It was the subway. Well, one of the things was the fact that there were these straps in this fast-moving vehicle hanging from the ceiling. That is just a very bizarre thing. You don't see that everywhere. So the fact that we had these straps because the vehicle moves fast and the standards are lurching. Okay, now, did you, let me put those back. Did you see how we had those grouped in the previous lesson? Those two details helped me figure out this, which got me to the subway. Okay, now, when I say identify one detail, one thing that helped you, what was one of the more helpful clues? When I say one detail, I mean one grouping of details, okay? The fact that they lurched wasn't enough. The fact that there were straps, there were straps so because standers lurch and they're trying to hold on to balance. My point is this, my second sentence has to mention both these. The grouping, if your grouping had three details, then your next sentence will be evidence and it will mention all three details. It's not, this is a detail and this is a detail. This is not enough. This is not enough. It was the combination that I needed to do. So a detail is a grouping, and in this case, these two. And so that is going to be my next sentence. I'll come back to it in a minute. Look. Your first sentence of your response is going to be the big answer. Boom. Then the next sentence is going to be evidence. Okay, what details were most helpful? Oh, whichever ones you say, well, these were the ones. There's no answer. Certain ones are more helpful. You have to guess the right ones. No. Which ones helped you get to the answer? Those are the ones you want to mention. Now, this is where you will use those phrases that I'm positive you've heard before. Things like, according to the text, one detail from the reading, a second example, the author states. Okay, I just put a couple of them, but those sentence starters. Do you see how this is in green? Yeah, baby, because it's going to be how you kick off each of your detail or evidence sentences. So give me the answer, period. Use one of these sentence starters and tell me which details in the same sentence. Give me one of those. And again, what's that going to be? It's going to be a sentence. So what am I going to do? Put a period up there because that better be a sentence. So when you're asking, how many sentences do we have to write? Well, we're up to 2, people. We're up to 2. Okay, but one piece of evidence, one detail is not going to be enough. So I'm going back to my subway train, and I'm going to tell you which other detail grouping was most important for me. Now, some people would say, and I'm not saying it's wrong, it just isn't my answer. Some people would say, oh, it was that there was a crowd, they were rushing to find a seat. But I'm not thinking that really got me to subway train, because you can rush to get a good seat at a free concert. You can rush to get a good seat at a restaurant. You can rush. So I don't think that that was screaming subway. And I know a lot of us might think the fast moving vehicle, but again, I had so many possible thoughts come to my mind. I don't think for me that was it. When we talk about evidence, we mean find the details that were most helpful, most powerful in getting you in the right direction. And for me, it was the fact that it's daytime, but it was dark. Like that, that whole idea that we had to be underground, we had to be in a tunnel. We had that was big for me. So I'm going to take off these two details because they're grouping. And this is going to be, for me, my second piece of evidence, right? Because you can't just have one, right? You have to have two, at least two. Probably could have more than two, but at least two. So back to our, how do you explain it in writing? Well, you better have a second detail, second grouping of details that was really important. We call it evidence, and it goes up here. And you're going to use sentence starters, probably, and the text also states a second detail, something like that. And again, finish it with the actual details, the words, and bam, you got it. Now, there is more to the written response. This lesson is only the beginning. This lesson is just the first step in writing your response. We're going to talk more about how your first sentence should start. We're going to talk about how the last sentence should sound. We're going to talk about elaboration. We're going to talk about more evidence. So there's more to come, but this mini lesson is just on, hey, you've already done the hard work, and all the thinking you need is right there. Just put it in this magic formula. So the last thing you think of becomes your first sentence. The clues that were most helpful become your evidence. Okay, let me show you how this looks. Okay, so I want to turn this into a sentence. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my screen for a minute because I want you to see the passage. Remember this passage? People crowded, okay, rushed to find a seat, vehicle, tighten their grip, okay, on the straps. Although daytime, it was blackness. Where are they? Okay, so I need to turn underground subway into a sentence. Look. Period, people. It needs to be a complete thought. So we got to turn it into a sentence. I have to turn it into a sentence. So my first sentence, do you see how there's my first sentence? That's going to be my second sentence. That's going to be my third sentence. Do you see how I didn't do any new thinking? It's all already there. I already did it on the silhouette head. So I'm just going to write this first sentence right now. So I need to use underground subway train in a sentence. And the question is, where are they? So use that, and now I'll put it into a sentence. Where are they? They are. Boom. Don't make this hard, you guys. All right. They are. All right. Here we go. They are in an underground subway. Okay. Or subway train or underground train. Okay. Period. I just did it. I just wrote the first sentence. This detail, or this inference is covered. Done. Boom. Good. Okay. So now I've got to turn this set of words. Where do these words come from? They're green. Where did they come from? My reading voice. Green details outside of my thinking come from the text, which means they're not my words. Whose words are they? The author's. So you better quote them because you didn't say them. You want evidence? Well, then really back it up by using actual words from the passage and put them in quotes. Now, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to use one of these simple little sentence starters that you've heard a million times. Okay, so they are in an underground subway train. I need to write a sentence and reference these details. What's my evidence? The text states, I got to prove they're in an underground train. The text states that, now I need to somehow work these words, because these are the author words, work these words into a sentence. The text states that when standers lurch, they would grip the straps hanging from the ceiling. There's other ways to do that, but I want to use all of those because all of them were helpful. So I want to use all of them in this grouping, okay? The text states that standards, I'm going to put that in quotes because these are author words, standards, lurch, and grip straps hanging from the ceiling. Do you see how helpful it is to, when you're actually doing the reading voice details, to actually use actual words from the text? Because now you're just gonna weave those words in, and you know exactly, well, those were the author's words. I wrote down the words the author actually said that were clues. So grip straps hanging from the ceiling. Okay, period, quote. Do you see how I have evidence now? I got evidence. Okay, am I done? No. Why? Because you have to have at least 2 pieces of evidence. All right, one detail, 1 piece of evidence is like coincidence. That's like lucky guess. Prove it. You need at least 2. All right, and most of us need more than 2, but we're going to do 2 for today. All right, so I need to do a second one. Well, I already know which clue I want to reference. I want to reference this idea that although it was daytime, their view was nothing but blackness. And although it was black outside during the day, there were lights on inside the vehicle. This idea that we're in a vehicle comes up in this one too. So that's big. I got so many things in this little grouping that really help prove my inference. Okay, so the text states that, you need a sentence starter. The text also states a second detail. Any of those would work. All right, so I'm going to go with the text also states that, boom. Well, how am I going to say this? I'm going to say something like, the text states that although it's daytime, the view from inside the vehicle was blackness. See how I'm using the author's words to prove my point. The text also states that although it was daytime is not my word. I'm going to credit that to the author. Bam, prove it. Daytime, the view from inside the vehicle. Okay. Vehicle. That was huge. The author gave me a big clue on that one. From inside the vehicle was blackness. Period. I just did it. Sentence 1 is your inference. Sentence 2 has to be evidence. Sentence 3 has to be more evidence. Okay, there's more to a response, but in this lesson, we're focusing just on the basics, the beginnings, and these 3 sentences. All right, you guys, let's try another one together. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to switch and flip my chart paper up, okay? Because I want to also reload my silhouette head with all the clues from the previous lesson when you guys figured out she was locked out of her house. Remember that one? Okay, while I'm changing sticky notes, flipping the chart paper, getting it ready, how about you do a quick reread of the passage that helped you figure this out? Okay, so you look at the screen and reread. All right, let's come back together. Okay, so remember that passage? Okay, so what we have to do is not only make the inference, which you already did, she was locked out of her house. How do you know? These green clues led us to those yellow thoughts to get us there. So we started on the outside, we went to the inside, we got our answer. But when you write it, what's the first sentence going to be? The inference. So point to the sticky note or holler out, what color sticky note are we going to start with? Yeah, pink, baby. We're starting with pink. All right, so your first sentence has to be something about the answer. She was locked out of her house. Good. Okay, so now we need to have evidence. What's evidence? It's a detail. What kind of detail? Any old detail you want? Just pluck one of the green ones? What kind of detail? The most helpful details. Well, you know what? For me to pick the most helpful details, I actually have to look back at my thoughts on yellow because it was that got me to the answer. So how helpful was the thought? So let's look back, okay? So emptied her backpack, okay? First she dug through it, then she emptied it. She was shaking all the items out. And we said, boy, she's desperately panicking. She's looking for something. So would that be most helpful? Or the fact that she called a lot of people and sent a lot of texts. She was doing a lot of communicating. If I just came up to you and said, hey, I'm going to call a lot of people and send a lot of texts, would you assume I'm locked in my house? Yeah, no, not necessarily. So is that one of the more helpful details to get you to the inference? No. See how you kind of test it? That's important. So I don't think it's going to be that. Okay? How about the fact that she walked around her house twice? Outside. She's walking around the outside of her house. She's done it twice. I mean, it's a little weird. Okay? We said she's inspecting, she's checking things out. What we didn't talk about, but I think we now realize is she's probably looking for an open door or an open window. Okay? So I could see maybe, okay? But she also might, walking around the house doesn't scream to me she's locked out. But that's me. You think about it. Let's look at one more grouping. You got this grouping. She was outside her own house. She stayed on the front porch. She sat down on the front step. She stays outside her own house. Never goes in. Now, which two details would you write your sentences about? And keep in mind, there is no single right answer. That's the whole point of an inference. If there was an answer, we wouldn't call it an inference. We would call it an answer. The whole point of an inference is it's your opinion, your claim, but you're going to back it up with the best evidence. So if our claim is she's locked out of the house, which two groupings, two green sets of details, which two would you talk about? Okay, we might have a couple different combinations, but I'm going to guess most people are thinking the whole emptying of the backpack, the digging through it. So remember, if you take one detail, you got to take the whole group. All right, so this counts as how many? I know there's two sticky notes, but how many pieces of evidence is this? It's only one, baby. It's only one. Oh, whoop, I lost she's locked out. I'll grab that in a minute. Let's figure out your second detail. Your second detail, which one? The fact she never goes in her own house. Okay, she stays outside. So she's looking around for something, panicking, emptying out her backpack, and never goes inside the house. Let's go with those two. All right, you guys. Now again, I'm seeing 3 sentences, right? 3 periods. For right now, our response is 3 sentences long. Okay, so locked out of house is not a sentence. Let's look back at the screen. What's the question? What is her problem? Okay, don't make this hard. Turn it into a sentence. The response plus this inference. What would you write in your first sentence? Her problem is she's locked out of the house. Sure. Okay. Her problem is she's locked out. Period. Locked out of her house. Good. First sentence, done. Now we move on to the second sentence. How do you start an evidence-based sentence with one of those stems? Let's hear it. How would you do it? Use one of those stems. And how would you use any or all of these word combinations? The text states she dug through her backpack, then emptied it, and shook out the items. Do you see how smart you sound? That's such a long sentence. I mean, but all of that is just more ammo for evidence. That's why we write about the grouping, not just, well, she dug through her backpack. Well, she might be looking for a stick of gum. That doesn't mean she's locked out, all right? But it's the weight of all of those author details. And when it's an author detail and I write the author's words, I'm going to put quotes around it. Good. Her problem is she's locked out of her house. The text states she dug through her backpack, or I think it was dug in. It actually was dig. Dig in, that she digged. Well, I'm not going to say that. The text states dug in her backpack. Okay, so first she looked and she couldn't find it. And then she emptied. So I'm just going to say empty her backpack. Oops, her backpack. Miss Beckons right fast. Okay. Then she emptied her backpack and shook out individual items. Remember that? Look there. She's shaking each item individually. Okay. So in her backpack and shook items individually. Individually. Period. All right. Items individually. Boom. Do you see it? First sentence, inference. I give you my answer, right? Her problem is, that's my claim. How do I know that? Because the text said, da, 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 da. These were all clues for one piece of evidence, one thought I had. Okay, now I've got to write my third and final sentence, final for now, sentence. Okay, the text also states she stayed outside her own house, sitting on the front steps of the porch. The text also states she, I lost it. She sat down on the front step of her own front porch. Or she sat down on the step of her own front porch. Which words? Front porch was the author, right? Sat down on the step of her own front porch. You guys, what this lesson was about was the whole idea that readers not only can make inferences and say them, but they can make inferences and explain them in writing. This lesson started just the beginnings of what those written responses should look like. And we realized that the first sentence should actually be the last thought you had, the inference. We learned that the evidence is the best details, the ones that got you closest to the inference. And evidence is multiple details. It's often a group of details. Don't just take one of those sticky notes, take the whole grouping. Okay, if you were in Mrs. Smecken's class, what you would be doing right now is you would take the 3 passages from the previous lesson that you did the silhouette heads on. Remember that? I said, make 3 silhouette heads, print them, trace them, draw them, whatever. And I said, now figure out what are they doing. Did you figure out what they were doing? Laser tag. What was happening here? Some indoor sporting event was happening, but we know it's indoors, right? Because we had all of these. Okay, and so whereas on the floor, it didn't say the ground, it said the floor. So it's an indoor event of some kind. And what was her problem? Hurt isn't enough. Tell me more. Hurt what? It must be something with her leg or knee because of how she was kind of protecting it and avoiding putting any weight on it. Okay, I want you, if you're in Miss Smecken's class, I want you to actually take these 3 passages, and I would actually go back to your 3 silhouette heads, and I want you to turn all 3 into written responses. How many sentences should each response be? 3 sentences. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So you're going to write a total of 9 sentences, people. That's it. If you're wondering, how many sentences? 9, 3 each. All right? This is what readers do. They can explain their thinking in writing. If you're in Mrs. Smecken's class, that's what we would be doing. But your teacher might have a better idea.